Now, you were very keen to do this because you're... tell us the state of the strike action that have been called over job cuts and pay offers for university workers. I think, is it all university workers or just lecturers?
So, first of all, thank you for having us on. I think it's really important to be able to speak about this. So we are balloting all staff in higher education, so across all the universities in the UK, and we are doing it because essentially higher education is in a deep crisis. It has been underfunded for quite some time. We have really overburdened staff, intolerable workloads, and we would say that students are being incredibly shortchanged by the status quo. At the moment, we've got 1 in 2 universities making cuts. So that's 4,000 courses have already been closed, 15,000 potential job losses over the entire sector this year. And I think we can see that figure set to rise. And really, the reason that underlies all of this is, for many years now, we have had cuts in funding to higher education. As you know, fees haven't gone up much, though I know that's due to change. And the fees didn't replicate the funding that was cut. And what we've seen in the sector is institutions entering into fierce competition with each other to recruit as many students as possible. So for some institutions, this means they're having a spike in recruitment one year, but then a bust the next year. For some, it's bust after bust after bust. And it's leading to all manner of essentially crises in delivering the programmes, cuts to staff that students really rely on.
But that's bad management. That's bad leadership, isn't it?
It's both. It is certainly bad management. It is bad management. But the chronic underfunding of the sector, and I'm not letting the bad managers off the hook here, but the chronic underfunding of the sector has encouraged this short-termistic behaviour that is cannibalising the sector. So our ballot is about having a national agreement to protect against redundancies, and it's also about pay, which is shockingly low in higher education.
Well, just give us some examples of what people are paid, so different jobs that your members have. Because, look, most people are going to think, well, they're lecturers, they're professors, and they must be on a good whack.
So I will talk about not just lecturers, because we are one union that is balloting. It's more about the loss in pay, the loss in the value of pay. So if you are a senior lecturer, which means you not only did a PhD, but you have then been promoted within your field, you might be on £55,000. If you are one of the catering staff or the estate staff, you might be on £24,000. So let's just pick one of those people, for instance. They were being paid £20,000 in 2015. The pay increases that we've seen in higher education mean they're only being paid £24,700 now. So there's been a 17% loss across the board. So you could pick any point you want in the salary spine. So this year, the 1.4% pay offer is just simply inadequate to really help people cover the costs. And
is that to everybody?
Well, there is one group of people for whom this doesn't apply.
Oh, pray tell me who.
So listeners may not be familiar with the term Vice-chancellor. It sounds like something from Star Wars, but that is what we call the leaders of universities. They are called principals in Scotland. They have enjoyed substantial pay awards in this time. So in 2015, the average Vice-chancellor salary was £2,770,834. In 2024, it was £340,901. So taking into account how much inflation has been, it's a 2.8% real terms for them. But for some of them, it's been even more. So the VC's pay at Cambridge went up from £384,000 in 2015 to £577,000.
Don't they have 5 of them now?
Well, so they've been, getting pay awards of 7% plus inflation.
So what you're saying is that the average salary for a university vice-chancellor, I mean, to make it understandable, effectively the managing director of the university, is double what the Prime Minister gets.
Yeah, and in some cases it's significantly more. And I think the statistic which is key for why we are balloting is, if you take the lowest paid member of staff in a university, they're on about £24,000. If you take the average of 340 for a vice-chancellor, that's like 14 times the lowest paid. It's a significant amount more, and I think.
Well, to be fair, you would expect the Vice-chancellor, the person that effectively where the buck stops, that you would expect them to earn a high salary.
I would expect them to earn a high salary, but I think
because it is a competitive market.
It is, but 14 times more when, as we have just said, the sector is being financially mismanaged. If you are running a voluntary severance programme as an annual event year after year, if you are saying that you can't afford to, properly staff your counselling services, the things that really matter to students, I think it then becomes quite difficult to justify those.
What's new? Because when I was at university in the 1980s, again, there were always sort of rows about cuts to higher education. It seems as though nothing has really changed. I graduated 40 years this year, and nothing seems to have changed. And I was doing it in the days when there were no fees, there were no loans. It was all grants, and the government paid for the fees.
It's changed a lot for the staff. If you were to ask staff what's changed, things have changed substantially. I mean, the erosion of, at least 20% of the value of your pay, the work that you do. Our members report working every weekend as a regular thing. And it might not seem like it to you, but on the ground for students, things have got manifestly worse. The access to things like mental wellbeing provision is incredibly difficult now. The rates that they pay for accommodation, for fees, they are spending about £18,000 per year as a minimum.
So why are the number of students still going up? This is what I've never been able to get my head around this, because I'm thinking, well, I was a classic first person in my family to go to university.
Same.
Would I have gone if I was facing the level of costs that current students are facing? And I think the honest answer is no. But then you look at the statistics, and high fees don't seem to be putting people off.
Well, I think 17-year-olds are being asked to make incredibly serious decisions where I think, the consequences of what they really mean perhaps don't loom so large. But I also think, and to be fair to Labour, I think they're trying to address this. There aren't an abundance of other routes for young people to enter into now. There isn't lots of other choices available to them, whether or not it's a trade, an apprenticeship, or even just, wanting a particular type of professional job, but university being one of the main ways to access that. So we need to see much more investment in our tertiary kind of further education and skills and adult education, because for some people, university is exactly what they need and want, but for many others, it isn't.
Now, you've painted a picture which is fairly negative about the sector at the moment. But when you look at the university league tables, we've got 3 universities in the top 10 in the world. I think we've got, 7 in the top 30? We do have a world-leading higher education system. And yet, I don't think the amount of money that is invested in higher education by the taxpayer in this country is on a level with many other European countries. So how does that happen?
You are completely right. We have a world-leading university system in the UK, but the dirty secret of it is that it is being delivered by Deliveroo employment practices. And the reason it maintains its kind of gold standard status is that the people who work within it love their work, love their research, love their teaching, love their students, and love their colleagues. And I really think what people need to understand is the breaking point that we are at. It isn't world leading because we've got vastly overpaid vice-chancellors making great decisions. It's world leading because we have a heritage and a legacy, and at this moment in time, we still have people who are really invested in being there.
Right, here's a controversial question, and we're going to come to your calls in a very short time. You can also watch us on Global Player and the LBC app if you'd like to as well. Would it really matter if a few universities went out of business?
Yes.
You're obviously going to say yes, but let me put the case. I'm not personally arguing for this, but I've got to play devil's advocate, because there are universities, shall we say, that don't perform and frankly never have performed as well as a lot of their competitors, and it is a partly commercial system. A lot of universities attract a huge amount of foreign students, and I think personally that's a great thing, but some don't. And surely it has to be partly about the survival of the fittest.
No, I think that's a really unhelpful way to think about managing education. What we have seen in the UK, particularly in the last 15 years, since we sort of, just said, let's draw back public funding and let's just hope that fees and the market provide, is we have had perverse decisions by universities. So rather than them focusing on what they are good at, focusing on what is good for the civic community that they are embedded within, so that might be providing staff for the hospital or whatever, they have been trying to jump through hoops to attract students, to attract foreign investment, to do all manner of things that have taken them away from the bread and butter of what a university should be. So if now we find ourselves in a situation where universities have diversified too much to try and kind of, stake out a place in this marketplace, we shouldn't be saying, well, survivors of the fittest, let's let that university go to the wall with all the jobs that it has in that particular city and all of the things that are embedded within that. We should be saying, and Labour should be saying, we've inherited this mess, and they did inherit a mess. How are we now going to actually protect jobs, protect students that are already in that system, and protect local economies who frequently rely on the universities? Like Dundee, for example, terribly mismanaged by their university leaders. They've lost £30 million. They don't know where it's gone. The Scottish Government have had to step in. 1 in 7 people in Dundee are attached to the university somehow for employment. Like, you can't let that go to the wall.
So effectively, you're saying that the government, whether it's the Scottish Government or English or Welsh governments, they have to effectively be the employer of last resort. That if a university looks as if it's going to go under, the government will have to step in.
I think we have to find a way to ensure that the incredibly dedicated and educated people who contribute so much to our society. You think of all the different people that get trained and employed through universities, have their skills valued, and if that means that they need to be redeployed because, for whatever reason, that's what we should be doing. And that's what our ballot is about. It's about saying the bad management of a university by a collection of people cannot mean...
But how is going on strike going to help the future of universities? Because inevitably students will suffer because of it. They already have done. There was a strike. I remember a friend of mine from outside this country was at the University of Edinburgh, and his whole degree course was ruined by continual strikes on behalf of the lecturers, to the extent that I think they at one point refused to mark the final exams. I mean, going on strike doesn't solve anything, does it?
Sorry. I'm sure UCU members would argue that the degree of students was really ruined by the bad management of the universities. What I would say is no trade union member takes strike action without giving it serious thought. The first point of a ballot is to increase your leverage, to show employers that you are very serious about this issue. That is what we are doing here. We would hope that we don't have to take strike action. But Iain, 4,000 courses cut. Some of those courses students are already enrolled on and the staff have been sacked. 15,000 jobs to go this year unless something changes. The status quo...
Where does that figure come from?
That's our own figures from branches reporting to us the amount of redundancies that institutions have said they need to make.
And what proportion of those jobs are on the academic side?
So it will depend at different institutions, but for us, that's jobs that we think our members are facing, so UCU members. So they would be either senior professional service admin staff or research or other types of academic and teaching staff, maybe people who work in libraries or technicians, so senior academic or professional service grade. And the status quo, the point I would make is, because I agree with you, before I got elected to lead this union, I was a senior lecturer. You don't become an academic because you want to go on strike and not teach your students. There is nothing you enjoy more than graduation day and seeing someone who you maybe met when they were 18 and really worried about the world, and they're 21 and they're transformed and you want them to go out and thrive. But the system we have right now, where people are, drowning under intolerable workloads, where we've got voluntary severance. I've just come from the University of Nottingham. They were on strike today. Nottingham lost 700 staff this year through voluntary severance. So some of them are admin staff, some of them are academics. So now we've got staff with students turning up 4 weeks into term and there's not enough of them to do the work. This system is terrible right now for students.
Right. Well, if you are a student, if you work in a university, or if you've just got a general view on the future of universities, obviously would like your calls on this strike ballot. But really, anything to do with higher and further education, Jo Grady is here to take your calls, and we'll come to your calls right after this break at 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Hello, I'm a National Lottery scratch card. Over 5 people a second win with me. Ooh. That's like 30 winners since I started talking. Oh, 12 more. 14. 21!
Is there a win in store for you? Play a National Lottery scratch card today. Winners is an average. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
At TfL, we're helping to make bus journeys greener. Our entire bus fleet is 100% low or zero emission at the tailpipe, including those for our Superloop routes, helping improve air quality for all. And we'll have a fully zero-emission fleet by 2034. That is how we're making the greener way to travel brighter for everyone. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
Imagine the very focal lens of the future, personalised to you, engineered with artificial intelligence and powered by your visual behaviour. Experience instantly sharp vision in motion with Varilux XR Pro lenses from Essilor. Find your local optician at essilor.com and ask for Varilux XR Pro.
Imagine a delicious patty nestled between 2 buns with cheese and ketchup. It's not a burger. That patty is actually sausage, which makes this a sandwich. A breakfast sausage sandwich. The new $1.99 sausage sandwich from McDonald's. Made with RSPCA assured pork. Until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary. Upcharges and fees apply to delivery. Subject to availability.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
20 past 8. You can watch us on Global Player and the LBC app. We've got Jo Grady with us. She is the General Secretary of the University and College Union, the UCU. So let's go to your calls. Steve is the first-time caller. He's phoned in from Derby. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Jo. So Ian, I'm with you. I graduated in the 1980s. I was the first person from my family to go to university. And I think I've got a couple of points, really, for Jo. Over the last 20 or 30 years, we've seen a massive expansion in higher education. And I think I saw a report earlier on this year where the number of graduate jobs is dropping significantly. And we seem to be pumping out lots and lots of graduates, and there just isn't the graduate level jobs that, to service those graduates. And on the same side of that, I think employers are to blame for requiring people to have a degree for jobs that 20 years ago you could quite happily do, with O-levels or GCSEs as they are now. I'm seeing, I look on Indeed and all those platforms, and employers want degrees for jobs that are less than 25 grand a year. I mean, why? What's driving that? Why is that happening? It's not sustainable.
So you are right, that in terms of the graduate level jobs, but I guess the thing that I would say is the focus on graduate level jobs wasn't really an issue until you had graduate debt. So now there is an expectation that you will get a payback for the debt that you are willing to get yourself into.
It's unsustainable, Jo. It'll never happen. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know, and my son is looking to go to university soon. We're looking at the amount of debt that is building up in the system. It's just unsustainable. How can it be sustainable? Who's paying for all this at the end of the day?
Well, if you let me, what the point that I am making, and I think it speaks to kind of the central issue here, is we have seen a reconfiguration of what it is to go to university. University is now a product that you invest in, and the expectation is that once you leave with that investment, you will cash it in the labour market and get something. We never had a public conversation in the UK that that's what we wanted to do with education, but it is the result of a set of policy decisions that were taken from the 90s onwards to start de-investing in education from the taxpayer and pushing the burden to fund higher education on to students. So that has led to the exact scenario that you've outlined. The issue for us now is, do we want it to be this way? I would argue no. It's meaning that, working class kids, loads of people who, for whatever reason, don't think that they can shoulder the debt, don't think that they can shoulder the cost, are making decisions that richer kids don't have to make. And if we look at our neighbours in Europe and in other countries that have really admirable, low fees or no fees higher education systems, they aren't just saying to students, you pay the debt. Sometimes they're saying to students, you pay some, the government pays some, and do you know who else pays? Businesses. In the UK, businesses don't pay for the cost of higher education really at all. We've argued as a union that, and I'm not suggesting all employers, but big employers should be paying some form of graduate tax or extra national insurance contributions, or we should be asking corporations to be paying a slightly higher corporation tax so that we can raise revenue to correct what is a broken market system in higher education.
Yeah, but Jo, on the flip side of that, there aren't the level of big corporations to service that, the amount of students.
There totally are.
They're not.
There is. We've modelled it in the union. If we put corporation tax up by a small margin, we'd raise £19 billion. We've modelled it. It is.
I don't know where
I don't know what to tell you, but it's true.
I'm sorry, Jo. I completely disagree with you.
Well, you're disagreeing with facts, but that's fine.
Yeah, but if it did raise £19 billion, the fact is that there would be social care demands.
There would be, but
NHS
the point
demands,
I'm making is, if we open our minds, there are other ways to manage our economy and fund the things that are important to us. We have got trapped in this doom spiral of marketised neoliberal economics that says this is the way it has to be and it's rubbish, but we're just going to have to deal with it. And it doesn't have to be this way at all.
OK, Steve, thank you. Let's go to Novella, who is from Brent. Hello, Novella.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Jo.
Hello.
I hope you can hear me.
We can.
I wanted to... OK, I work for University College London, and I am a so-called lecturer teaching, because UCL has a system of recruiting academic staff on 3 tracks: teaching only, research only, and proper academics.
Yeah.
And teaching track and research track staff are now two-thirds of the academic staff employed by UCL. And one of our problems is that we are excluded from the tenure type rights enjoyed by academics, which makes us vulnerable to dismissal and redundancy. So I wanted to ask you, do you think higher education in the UK is going to continue like this forever? And what is the risk if universities continue to keep employing staff like me on insecure contracts?
Well, when you say an insecure contract, what length are you talking about?
Okay, for researchers, it means that they are on so-called permanent contracts, but with a fixed term. So when the funding is over, they are generally sacked. It's a big waste of human material, basically, potential.
But are you arguing that essentially people in the higher education sector, we should return to the days when effectively people had a job for life?
First of all, I think we should go back to the situation of having proper academic jobs, which are 3-pronged. Academics should do teaching, research, and academic administration, and be paid for all of them. There should not be 3 different types of contracts, but only one. And then, does it have to be for life? Well, tenure is important because an academic needs a lot of time to develop. But this is a more complicated question and depends.
Okay,
also.
well, let's get an answer from Jo.
Thanks, Novella. I was actually at UCL this week, and I think, it takes a lot for people who are on insecure contracts to talk about it in higher education. There are 90,000 insecure contracts in higher education. A lot of the teaching that students get is done by people who, you were asking how long. Sometimes those contracts will be for like a term. Sometimes the university will give you a contract for 9 months because they don't want to give you a contract for the summer. Sometimes we've had members that have basically said they've been on a revolving door of fixed-term contracts for the best part of 10 years. So their jobs and their contribution are crucial to the university. But one of the things that universities have done, because they have these kind of cycles of peaking in student numbers and then crashes, is they like to keep their teaching staff on fixed-term contracts, on insecure contracts, because if you don't know how many students you're getting until people turn up in October, you don't want to over-recruit your staff and have too many. So you wait until October, you wait until all the international students have arrived, you wait until the students that you didn't mean to take through clearing, but you were trying to take them because you didn't know if you'd get enough money. So you have all of these students and you end up having to rush around to try and recruit people to do the teaching. As you can imagine, if you're stuck in a position like Novella, in London particularly, you might have 3 different fixed-term contracts across 3 different universities. If you're in the Midlands, where our previous caller was, you might have a fixed-term contract at Sheffield, Derby and Nottingham, and you have to zip between those cities every day of the week. And then you think you're a student getting, what is going to be great teaching from Novella, but ultimately they don't know if she's going to be there next semester. If they graduate and that she was their favourite lecturer and, they think she's going to give them a great reference, she's not there. She's moved on. And that's the human cost of this business model. It has real implications for staff who can't plan their lives, who don't earn enough to save for a deposit, let alone be able to know what city they're going to be in. But it's really bad for students who want some consistency, who want to feel settled and stable and secure. And the current model that we've got can't deliver that.
Novella, thank you. Great question. Keep your calls coming. 0345 6060 973. We've got quite a few texts and WhatsApp messages here too, so we'll wade through those as well. It's 8:31. News headlines on LBC with Daisy Steele.
The only British soldier ever charged over Bloody Sunday in Londonderry has been found not guilty of 2 murders and 5 attempted murders. A judge decided there was not enough evidence to prosecute the man known as Soldier F. 13 people were shot dead in Derry on one of the darkest days of the Troubles. Resident doctors in England will go on strike for 5 days next month in a row over pay and jobs. Members of the British Medical Association will walk out from the 14th of November. The Health Secretary has called the action unnecessary. 2 Met police officers working at Charing Cross Station have been sacked after they were secretly filmed as part of a documentary. A hearing found comments made by PC Philip Nielsen and PC Martin Borg amounted to gross misconduct. LBC weather: scattered showers moving into Wales and southwest England tonight. Some isolated showers in the north. Lows of 4. Cloudy with rain tomorrow, mostly in eastern areas. Sunny and dry for most in the south, but windier with blustery showers for Wales and the southwest. Highs of 13 degrees.
This is LBC.
When's the perfect moment to take that leap? With electric vehicles, that moment is now. The all-electric Leap Motor T03. Right now, with the Leap grant, it's incredible value at 169 deposit and 169 per month with 0% APR, with amazing tech and spec too. Leap Motor. It's time to leap. Search Leap Motor T03. Personal contract purchase, Mint Green, T03, 48 months. Optional final payment, 5675. Leap Motor is credit broker, not in lender. Subject to status. T&Cs, Stellantis Financial Services.
I'm telling you, raise taxes, that's how.
Cut spending, less waste, more sense.
Move north, get more for your money.
Until winter hits your heating bill.
Fair.
Up to 9.13% annual return. We all agree that's strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to ignore.
Cufflink. Auto-invest property backed from £500. Visit cufflink.com. That's Kufflink. Register your interest today. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules apply to if ISAs and may be subject to change. Cufflink is authorised and regulated by the FCA.
At TfL, we're helping to make bus journeys greener. Our entire bus fleet is 100% low or zero emission at the tailpipe. including those for our Superloop routes, helping improve air quality for all. And we'll have a fully zero-emission fleet by 2034. That is how we're making the greener way to travel brighter for everyone. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:34. Jo Grady, who's General Secretary of the University and College Union, is with us taking your calls and messages. Mike says, do you think too many institutions have been awarded university status, leaving vacant a hole that polytechnics used to fill? That is a common thread that I often hear from people on the programme. So was it a mistake to turn polytechnics, which performed a different role to universities, or most of them did, and turn them into universities and therefore expect them to be able to compete with universities which have been established for decades?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a well-rehearsed debate in universities amongst staff as well. I think I would rather not focus on whether or not, it was a mistake to turn polytechnics into universities. I think what was more a mistake was to expect all universities to kind of become the same and seek to be excellent in all things. And I also think within that, this kind of valorisation of a degree as being the pinnacle of something that you would want to achieve. And I think, I referenced this earlier, I think we need a much more all-encompassing view of post-16 education, and of the role that further education has to play in that. I think particularly under the last government, I didn't ever meet a Tory minister who sent their kid to the local college, or indeed would have had ambitions for them to do that. And I think as a result, particularly in the early days, they just weren't really looking at the contribution of adult education and further education. The adult education budget's just been cut by Labour. It had already been cut significantly by the Tories. So I think as a country, we do really need to look at what things we want people to learn, where we want them to learn it, and how we best enable people being able to do that.
It is interesting you mention adult education, because I'm thinking, have I ever done a phone-in on adult education?
Oh, you should.
In 15 years, and I'm afraid the answer is no.
And you know what? Adult education. So when I was at the University of Leicester back in 2017, we were fighting to save the Vaughan Centre for Lifelong Learning. The Vaughan Centre, I think, is about 150 years old, had been set up by, various dignitaries in Leicester at the time, well older than the university. And the university tried to close it down. It ended up having to exist outside of the university, but was saved by the city. And I remember speaking to 3 generations of women from one family who'd all become mothers young in life and had gone to adult education and transformed their lives in adulthood, become solicitors and done all manner of things. Adult education is transformative, and as a nation, we have just cut it to the bone.
Well, I remember my old school, which was a comprehensive in Essex. There were dozens of courses and really weird ones as well. I mean, you could learn Dutch and things like that.
And we made the case to the Conservatives during the peak of the pandemic, when everybody was at home, when people were suffering with depression and all manner of other issues, of the role that adult and further education could have. If we invested people being able to spend their time productively, and it just wasn't a conversation because it wasn't being funded and it needed to be funded for it to exist, whereas we would argue there is all manner of other benefits from having people involved in adult and further education.
Right, let's go to Richard, who's a first-time caller in Bath. Hello, Richard.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Well, I'd just like to really contrast the university experience that I had versus the one that my son is having at the moment. When I went to university 35 years ago, I can't remember exactly, but it was something like 26 to 32 hours of lectures a week, and 25, 26 weeks a year. I've been absolutely appalled by my son's 11 hours a week on an engineering degree at a really very good university for $9,500. I mean, as I pointed out to other parents the other day, it's touching sort of £35 an hour effectively for his education for that. And they put 100 of them in a lecture theatre and can't make money. And I just don't understand where the money goes.
Well, I've got another question from David in Wilmslow along those lines, who says, how are the universities underfunded? What on earth have they been doing with financial controls? Another public sector mess. Sort yourselves out, says David.
I would be interested. I don't know if Richard's still on the call, what he studied.
He is.
Sure.
What did you study?
What did I study?
Yeah.
I did a business degree with languages.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I mean, I can't account for the 11 hours for engineering. I know that a lot of different courses have independent study, but I think the point that is being made here, and it's one that I would support, is that universities are taking a lot of money through fees. What we are seeing, and this is part of the problem that I was trying to outline earlier, the more we increase fees, there's a logic to it that we are therefore taking more money into universities and this is a good thing. But the more we increase fees, the more we are demanding that universities demonstrate to students who are now translated into customers value for money. So we see universities, to answer, I think it was David, the second person's question, we see universities investing in what we as a union would call vanity building projects, so things that make campus look shiny and nice, that they think attract students, but don't really enhance the student experience much. We see them often building overseas campuses, sometimes to the tune of hundreds of millions of pounds. We see them setting up joint ventures overseas in order to secure international students who pay a lot of money, so therefore bring in a lot of student income. What we don't see, and this is what I wanted to really hammer home, we don't see them spending that money on staff. So just a few statistics, and this might be why, the contact hours that your child is getting are significantly less than yours. So I've only got data here for back to 2008, not 35 years ago, sorry. But in 2008, 58% of a university's income was spent on staff. In 2020, that had gone down to 55%. In 2024, that was down to 51%. That's Universities UK own data. It's going to be in the 40s soon, if it isn't already.
But I think Richard does make a good point, because I've heard this in previous discussions on this subject, that contact hours seem to be dropping all the time. And so therefore the student doesn't feel that they're getting the benefit of the money that they're investing in their education, because I think some are as low as sort of 7 or 8 hours a week, which was certainly, I did a languages degree. It would have been a joke if I'd only had 7 or 8 hours a week.
Can I just say, Ian, I think there's a much more sinister outcome of these lower contact hours, and that's the boredom and the isolation and the mental health issues. I am absolutely convinced that some of the struggles that young students today seem to have going to university is because they've nothing to do.
What do you mean?
Well, it's 7 hours a week, 10 hours a week, 11 hours a week in lectures. And they're spending the rest of the time just sitting around in a way that just wasn't possible when it was 26, 30, 34 hours a week.
I think there is an isolation to student life that is now heavily mediated by technology. And I will be happy to extol the benefits of online learning. It got us through a pandemic. But I hear so many times from colleagues that some students choose to stay in their rooms and log on online and watch the lecture online rather than attend. And I think
that's so sad, isn't it?
It's incredibly sad, yeah. And you imagine
are we just old gits?
No, it's sad. I think it's sad. I'm happy to be an old git, but I do think it's sad.
Even though you're at least 30 years younger than me.
It's so I think there is an issue of students. And I don't think you can disentangle this from students being transformed into a customer. If you are spending a lot of money on your education, it is completely natural for you to do what Richard has just described and start working out how much you think you are paying per hour for your lecture time. If you went to university in a generation where you either didn't pay fees, or when I went to university, we paid £1,000 a year, so, didn't really kind of register as a fee, you were not doing that same thing. So yes, there may have been a reality that contact hours have declined, and that might be to do with universities, switching up the way in which they deliver content. But there is also just a reality that we are transforming what it means for students to be when they go to university, which has been negative in many ways.
Kathleen says, Ian, life at UEA was one big party in 1985 compared to 2025. Well, certainly witnessing it in 1985, I'll happily agree with you. John is in Richmond. Hello, John. Thank you very much, Richard, by the way. John, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Jo and Ian. I suppose I just kind of want to share experience of working in higher education and I think the system is broken. I worked at a smaller uni, had a satellite site in London, and it was very open knowledge that you over-recruit international students to get that cash cow. And now, 2 years later, now they want to get all the home students. That money has suddenly run out, and they've overspent on staff, and now they're trying to make all those cuts. I find myself in that situation. It just seems the system is kind of broken, and with the government making changes to international students, the focus is to recruit home students. It's never going to happen. And all this strike action and just everything, pay awards, I just don't see anything getting better, and it's just quite a really scary place to be. You think you've got a good job for life, but actually, working in one of these higher bigger universities, there's just no good end to it by the fields of things. So, it's a shame.
I mean, that's a very depressing call to finish this part of the programme with. But, I mean, are these things happening in other countries? Because I often think that we do have to look at other countries to see, well, are they operating a better system? What can we learn from them?
So other countries are not facing these problems at all, no. If we were to look to a comparable economy like Germany, they're not facing these problems. We don't see the opening up of satellite campuses with the pure intention to over-recruit as many international students as possible. And just on international students, the extent to which the UK higher education sector has become reliant on international students during the pandemic, the early stages of the pandemic where borders were closed, planes were grounded, we didn't have a vaccine, we didn't understand the virus at all. There were universities chartering private planes to bring students to the UK. That is how crucial the income was. But what I want to say to John is there is a way to make things better, and there is a way to actually defend ourselves against attacks, and it's joining UCU. It is taking part in the ballot and standing with your colleagues. And I'll end on this. Our union, UCU, is the only union in the UK that has won a pension back when it has been taken away by the employers. We won what was a massive cut to our members' pension back in the last few years, and we did that because UCU members believed in higher education, they believed in each other, and they stood together. So if you're not in UCU, John, join, because at the minute, I mentioned 15,000 redundancies across the UK. In places where people aren't losing their jobs, it's because our union is organising, balloting, and often managing to convince the university to look for cost-saving ways in other ways.
Do you know how much you'd have to pay for that advert on LBC normally? But we'll leave it there. It's 8:46.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
With the news that one of the people we sent back to France who came on a small boat has returned, we ask whether anything can solve the small boat's crisis.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
Imagine a delicious patty nestled between two buns with cheese and ketchup. It's not a burger. That patty is actually sausage, which makes this a sandwich. A breakfast sausage sandwich. The new $1.99 sausage sandwich from McDonald's. Made with RSPCA assured pork. Until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary. Upcharges and fees apply to delivery. Subject to availability.
Hello. I'm a National Lottery scratch card. Over 5 people a second win with me. Ooh. That's like 30 winners since I started talking. Oh. 12 more, 14, 21!
Is there a win in store for you? Play a National Lottery scratch card today. Winners is an average. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. Holiday Park at Vice-chancellor.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
At TfL, we're helping make roads safer. We're continuing to roll out lower speed limits because 20 miles per hour roads have already seen 24% fewer collisions causing death or serious injury. We're also improving junctions to help keep you safe and improving visibility for our bus drivers with new wing mirror cameras. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Comparison of collisions data before and after implementation of 20 miles per hour speed limit.
The £5 meal deal from McDonald's. Get a cheeseburger or mayo chicken, medium fries, 4 McNuggets and a medium soft drink for guess what? That's right, £5. It's not called the £5 meal deal for nothing. From 11 a.m. Not available on delivery. Carbonated soft drink upgrade fees apply. Participating restaurants subject to availability.
Iain Dale on LBC.
Jo Grady is here from the UCU, the University College Union, touting for members earlier there. Kate is the first... Well, by the way, just before we go on to the next call, I mean, has your union experienced an increase in membership? Because I think since the 1980s, there's always been, well, it has been the case that unions overall have experienced a dramatic fall-off. But I detect over the last few years that that's being slightly reversed.
A lot of unions in this current period have lost members. We have had marginal increases and basically sustained our membership, which, when you consider how many people are on fixed-term contracts and how many people are leaving the sector, I think is quite impressive.
Right, let's go to Kate, who's a first-time caller in Swansea. Hello, Kate.
Hello.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
What would you like to say?
So I work at university where we, in our faculty, are training the next generation of nurses, midwives, psychologists, medical professionals. And I know that for successive governments, we've recognised the need that we need to build a sustainable workforce in these areas to deliver services. And that's just one sector where we need this workforce. But yet universities in Wales, so Cardiff University was having to consider cutting and closing its nursing degree because it cannot afford to keep it going. And I don't see how we can meet some of the lofty goals that are needed from government policy that they've stated they have if we don't have this new trained workforce coming through, especially when you're thinking about workforces where we've got burnout happening in these professions. They are not lasting into the end of their working period. And to exacerbate that by not having the research that underpins evidence-based practice that benefits everybody and having that workforce, I'm really struggling to see how we're going to meet those goals.
Well, you've got elections coming up in Wales next year because education, higher education, is a devolved...
Universities aren't.
They're not. I thought sort of, because in Scotland they are, aren't they?
Not fully. I mean, in Scotland they generate funding for home fees in a different way, but a lot of policy for England and Wales is set up.
But there aren't fees.
Sorry, I interrupted you. But
there aren't fees in Scotland, are there?
No, but what I'm saying is that a lot of higher education policy is centralised.
Right. So, what do you say to Kate?
I mean, I completely agree with Kate. We had the post-16 white paper yesterday, and we obviously had significant discussion of the role of further and higher education at the Labour Party conference. You know, we've had, I think, a lot of warm words from Labour about the importance of these sectors in training, various workers. Everything you've said, essentially, Kate. But the crux of the matter is, if we don't see significant investment in both further and higher education, if we don't see the government stepping in, and we have seen them step in Scotland, for example, where they do have more control, we are going to see these programmes lost. Kate just spoke about Cardiff. Cardiff is still sitting on, I'd have to look up the exact figure, but I want to say £650 million of reserves. I think it's higher, but let's go with that rather than me say too high. And they announced, and they hadn't told any of the MPs in Cardiff that they were going to do this, that they were closing nursing. And obviously, as a city, very dependent on the production of nurses from the university. So we have universities that are autonomous, and there are good reasons why they're autonomous, but that also have terrible business models and are making terrible decisions.
£650 million of reserves. Now, I accept, I mean, anybody wants to save money for a rainy day, but I mean, that is an incredible amount. Now, is that replicated in other universities?
The University of Edinburgh has a kind of a reserves portfolio of 3 billion, and they're currently trying to make people redundant to save 140 million. So it is true that at the minute in the UK, some of our institutions are in kind of financial peril, but the majority of them are not. You know, they can afford to maybe run a one-year deficit. But what we are seeing is just the cannibalisation of the sector through these terrible business models. And I think what Kate said, which is crucial, is you've got burnout in people who work in universities that are training these people, which is, you know, bad enough if you're in a history or English department, but in terms of if you are training medical professionals has an additional knock-on consequence for society. And then, you know, these people are entering the NHS, and we know that people in that sector are not well paid too. So we do have a real, and, you know, I said it earlier to our first caller, I think we have to be more ambitious in how we are raising money to fund the things that are crucial for our lives.
Kate, thank you. Let's move on to Ben in Clacton. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Ian.
I think the line's giving up on us there. We'll try and get you back on a better one. But let's take a couple of texts. Chris says, cuts to university admin staff are going to be high. It's not just about academic or clinical staff. Chris in Bath says, universities, I think the promotion processes in UK universities are all very similar. They allow senior leadership to impose unfair workloads on staff struggling to make criteria. The same process is true of redundancy stress. Please ask Jo Grady to comment on stress and workload. They are huge issues in the sector. I don't mean to sound uncharitable, Chris, but I can't think of a single sector in our country where people don't suffer from stress and high workloads at the moment. I don't think universities are a sort of special case here, are they?
I mean, as you say, lots of people are suffering with stress. We've surveyed our own members, and a third told the union that they were suffering from signs of probable depression. When you talk to people who've been in the sector for a long time, the sheer relentless nature of the workload, and I'll give you an example. You know, someone, I think it was Richard said his son earlier sits in a lecture theatre of 100. That's little, that's small. Many people who are lecturing will have a lecture of 200. If the university decides they're going to over-recruit that year, you might have to teach that lecture, that module twice. So your workload is just mushrooming all the time. If you are the administrative staff in that department and you normally accommodate 200, but you've got 350. So it is the sheer unpredictability and uncontrollable nature of the numbers which is really making higher education inherently stressful. And of course, you're dealing with students who are paying a lot of money, who maybe have mental health challenges, you know, who you feel very personally responsible for. So I think there are a lot of triggers for stress that are very unique to higher education.
Right, we've got Ben back. Ben, go ahead.
Yes, Ian. Just before I ask the question,
no, we haven't got Ben back.
Sorry, Ben.
Let's go to Graham in Seaford. Hello, Graham.
Alexa, stop.
Pardon?
Hiya.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Jo.
Hi.
Hi, Jo. I'm an ex-UCU member. I was also a rep and a delegate at South Thames College. And I've been at FE for a long time, but I was also a TUC tutor, Union Learn, for teaching trade union education across many unions and stuff like that. There was a couple of questions I have been frustrated about. Like, I'm now a senior health and safety officer in further education still, and I'm just a bit worried about some of the reps on the shop floor that aren't supported by some of the regional officers. That's not having to go with the regional officers. I understand it's a difficult job. I've been there myself, but you know, I think that we really need to get a grip of that, because they've all got their own jobs teaching, and they are volunteers, and I think we have to really support from the branch and the region upwards, which I work with them. Like, I'm in a management role, but I've got quite a balance. So I understand trade unions and I understand the management part of it as well. But I think we really do need to sort that out, because these members who are paying a lot of money are not getting the support that they should do off the trade unions.
Okay, Graham, let's put that to Jo. We've only got a minute left, so sorry to cut you off.
It's always a difficult balancing act between supporting reps, when we've got colleges acting the way they do across the region. It's never good to hear that people don't feel fully supported. So I'm going to pick up the phone to South Thames College first thing in the morning and see what's what.
When's your strike ballot result announced?
The 1st of December.
Oh, that's a long time ahead.
Well, you've got to make everybody put something in the post. You've essentially, to win a ballot, you've got to get the majority of people to engage in stuff they don't normally do. So open their mail on time, fill in a form, and not leave it in their bag for 3 weeks, but actually put it in the post box. It is harder than you would think, and it costs a significant amount of money. This is why, we are hoping that the Labour government will make it an electronic ballot, which will be much cheaper and much easier all round.
Jo, thank you for coming in.
Thank
it's been
you.
really, really interesting. We've had loads of calls, and sorry we didn't get to all of them.
And we'll do adult ed next year.
I think we probably should. Thank you very much. Right, in the next hour, we're going to continue on an education theme because the government has announced that it's delaying reforms to the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities SEND system and other policy proposals for schools in England until next year. It originally planned to publish their schools white paper, which includes plans for SEND this autumn. But Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, said there would be a further period of co-creation. Nope, me neither. Now, the Disabled Children's Partnership said the delay was deeply frustrating for parents, but added it was important that the government takes time to make the right decisions. The County Councils Network called it massively disappointing. What is your experience of special needs education? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock. A former paratrooper has been cleared of murdering 2 people